And welcome in to Press Box Live. This Facebook live interview on Zoom is presented by Live Casino Hotel, now open and taking all necessary safety precautions. I'm Stan the Fan of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is my partner on these Zoom video interviews, Gary Stein. Gary, how are you?
Stanley, I'm good. How are you, my friend?
Good. And joining us from Florida is an old friend of ours, number 6'3", Wally Williams, former Baltimore Raven, former Cleveland Brown, and also former New Orleans Saint. How are you, Wally? How you staying? You and your family staying healthy during all this?
We are doing well. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Gary. We're doing well. Florida's a crazy place, so we have to take caution that we can have that at our disposal. And for our area, we're here in northern Florida, so it's we're doing pretty good. Trying to move as normal as we can right now, but we're doing pretty good.
Hey, the main reason we wanted to have you on was to talk about, in football, just from a normal actuarial table. That's what insurers use to say how long somebody's going to live. Football players live a lot less than Gary Stein or me, okay? And the linemen can live 10 or 15 years less than average guys like us. So that means that with this coronavirus going around, the wide receivers and the quarterbacks and the kickers, they're not in the trenches, so to speak. Is this playing football more dangerous for offensive and defensive linemen, Wally?
Man, you got me thinking there, Stan. Because I'm in that list, so I guess I'm going to be living a lot shorter than everybody else. Okay?
Well, it doesn't mean everybody, but I mean,
Right, I'm just saying. But you're right. There's a concern. There are a lot of concerns that players have in their post-football careers. Big guys, offensive linemen don't usually work out as much, and you don't have that consistent diet and consistent schedule that you usually have when you're playing the game. So in your retirement phase, you have to maintain conditioning because there is a very strong chance that we tend to gain weight after retirement. You see guys that have friends who they play at 300. You see them 10, 15 years later, they're 450. And you have to pay attention to those things, especially in a moment like this. High blood pressure,
diabetes, sure.
All these things are definitely prevalent with bigger guys. Especially minority guys. So the hazards are already laid out in front of you way before you have to deal with any kind of pandemic. And if this is intensify anything, you have to take every cautionable measure that you have to have in your resume on your disposal right now to be as safe as possible. And this is something that we guys talk about every day as well. My little group of ex-players, we make sure that we are monitoring each other and making sure guys are out and trying to be consistent.
Well, we've got a couple of the former Raven linemen in help me out, Matt Burke and Marshall Yanda. They both, as soon as they retired, like the light switch went on, they both lost like over 100 pounds when they stopped playing. How is your health these days?
So far, so good. My playing days, I was about 325.
Right.
Right now, I'm sitting at about 280, which is great. I never was a diet kind of guy.
Right.
But I was able to figure out some things. I did spend a lot of time in Arizona and training out there with a good friend of mine, and learned out some basic eating things that you can do just so you don't balloon up and get overly just get out there with your physical health. I mean, look, taking carbs out of the diet is probably the main thing, and we keep our carbs down and maintain an active workout schedule. There's a balance you can maintain without just going hardcore and going into somewhere where you have to do something drastic to start losing weight.
Hey, Wally, I'm just going to ask you point blank a question. When players are deciding this year if they're going to play or not, right? Some have already opted out. There are a lot of concerns. Of course, there's the health concern, the safety concern. your family, economics. You know, do you need the money, right? How big is the money? My question to you, point blank, all things being equal, if you were playing this year, or if you were in the NFL this year, would you play?
That's an interesting question because I've had this conversation with my son and some other teammates as well. If you're talking to the Wally Williams, that was an undrafted free agent, okay,
Right.
out of college and trying to make the team, there's no doubt that I will be playing. Okay,
Right.
there wouldn't even be a question. I mean, yes, economics is trying to really get a career. Is trying to establish myself for a very long time if everything works out, so I can have enough money to take care of generations of my family. So a young Wally Williams, definitely. There's no doubt about it. Now, the franchise Wally Williams,
Wally Williams, when he got that money in New Orleans,
there were too many people involved.
yeah.
So I did have a family at that particular time, young kids. And that would have been at the forefront of my decision-making process. Really the safest of to keep my family safe as possible. Economics are always in there as well. They never, ever leave the game. That's what it is. It's a business. So you have to weigh those options as well. But it would have been an easier decision for me to opt out if I was that franchise version of Wally Williams and I was that undrafted free agent version of Wally Williams.
Can I just jump in real quick, Gary? I'm just curious about this, Wally, this aspect of it. If you were not Wally Williams' offensive lineman, if you were wide receiver Wally Williams or quarterback, would the position have affected your decision whether to play or not? In other words, isn't it more dangerous for a lineman who is in the trenches with these guys?
You know, I think it will be potentially a little bit more dangerous because we are constantly having contact and engaging with each other every play. So yeah, it would be an easier decision if I was on the perimeter. If I was a guy run downfield and just getting hand checked for the most part, it probably would not affect me mentally as much as it would if I knew that not only am I going to be making contact every play, but we're up close and personal.
Yeah.
I mean, you actually look in the guy's mouth, okay, while you're right there in his face and you're engaging helmet to helmet, all those things. So there would be more potential to get, something, happen in between that situation when you're up close and personal with anybody, much more just like we are right now. That's why we have to wear a mask right now and keep our distancing. So there's no doubt that would have a huge sway in my thought process on what I would do.
Hey, Wally, while you're back there thinking about your career, the young Wally Williams undrafted and then the free agent Wally Williams, let me stay back there with you for a minute. When the Ravens moved here in '96, you had already been in the league for a few years with the Cleveland Browns. You moved to Baltimore with the team, of course. In '96, the first draft choice the Ravens ever made was a potential and true to be a Hall of Famer in John Ogden, who played on that offensive line that you played on. But I wonder, from your perspective, after being in the pits or the trenches for a few years, undrafted free agent out of Florida A&M, you had a chip on your shoulder. You had to work for every single thing you ever got in the NFL. There were no guarantees at all for Wally Williams. To see a guy like John Ogden come up, number 4 selection overall, and all the accolades that came with it, starter from day one, albeit at guard. Personally speaking, what were your thoughts about your journey compared to his journey and how much he may have had to have learned the stuff that you learned over your first 3 or 4 years?
It's a good question.
Wow. That's a great question. And I want to add a little bit to that. I want to add more.
Go ahead.
Well, my first introduction to that scenario, was we got to go back to Cleveland for this.
Right.
Because, I was maybe the 10th or 11th rated center coming out in the draft. And we happened to draft the number 1 rated center in the draft that year, which was Steve Everett.
Right.
Okay, so
he was a monster.
Yeah.
To see the difference from coming from Florida A&M and going to Michigan.
Sure.
Okay. the major thing that was really way out there to me that I could not gauge initially was football IQ. Guys that played at major Division I schools, they ran pro style offenses and actually had calls. And there was a simulation of what I saw in the NFL when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
We did not have the same complexity of an offense at Florida A&M that team, Michigan's, the Ohio States. You're dealing with even though my coach was a professional coach, Ken Riley was my head college. We just did not run a complex offense. So there were a lot of things I had to pick up that I was not really aware of, nor was I really prepared to deal with. And I had some great coaches that were very patient with me. Kirk Ferentz and Pat Hill were they worked out me and Orlando. I wasn't by myself. Me and Orlando. We were in 5 a.m. chalk talk sessions with Pat Hill before practice, trying to learn the offense, the calls, and all these things like that. So I would say the development was totally different. Now, by the time Jonathan got there, and now you're seeing this 6'8" athlete. Okay, now, I mean, he was number 4 overall, and he showed us very quickly what that meant. Okay? Very quickly. To that point in my life, I had never seen an athlete that big, okay, and that agile.
Wow.
You know, I thought I was twinkle toes around the building, dancing. that was always my deal. Jonathan challenged that. He challenged that, and he was not afraid of the challenge. Usually guys are shy away. Me and Orlando were roommates, so we were very close that time. And he's 6'7", 350. Now we had this guy 6'8", about 325, 330, that can run right next to me. And I was a 4'8", 40 guy as an offensive lineman. He had that kind of agility. Now I will say one thing I never saw J.O. do. I never saw him lift a weight.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know. He when we got on the bench and started doing upper body lifts, he was just had a towel around his neck to say, "Hey guys, just hanging out with you guys right now." But he did squat and work on his lower extremities very, very hard, and that was his balance. That was where he played. You never saw him out of position, or his legs were too wide where he would, be falling to the left or the right. So he had tremendous athletic ability, tremendous balance, and tremendous lower body strength. And yeah, it wasn't a surprise to me at all, okay, how J.O.'s career ended up. You saw it from day one. It wasn't a gradual ascending. He was there the very first day. He walked in the very first practice when he grabbed Dan Footman by the throat and almost choked him to death. Okay, and that was it. We didn't see anything else. Okay, well, he's good. So
he's good.
He's good.
Gary,
he's good.
Gary, go ahead.
No, I was wondering, Wally, because you and I have worked together on Ravens radio broadcast for years back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And we've talked about the journey of an undrafted free agent, the chip that's on your shoulder. So it's interesting that you say that even though there may have been a little bit of, how should we say it, personal, I wouldn't say animosity, that's wrong. But, I think it's fair to say that, look at this guy, the first day he comes in, he's got all that money, he's got all that accolades, he's got all that. What does he have? But you just said from day one, he had it and he deserved it.
He deserved it. And Gary, just to be 100% honest with you, if you don't have that little edge to you, because look, when I did come in as an undrafted free agent, my salary was $115,000. Okay, that was my salary for that season. Okay, Steve was our first round pick. His signing bonus was $2.3 million. So, yeah, I really want to know why this young man is $2.2 million better than me. Right today. We have on the same uniform. Okay, I want to know the difference. I'm not 6'5". Maybe that's it. Okay, I didn't go to Michigan. Maybe that's it. But mainly we're going to figure out a way to close this gap.
Right.
So there's a motivating sector into that. And you just have to put your blinders on and go forward as much as you possibly can. And fortunately for me, I was able to do that and play for a long time.
Yeah, just want to ask you, and we'll save that. Maybe we'll get Jo on one of these videos this fall. But was Jo respectful of Tony Jones? In other words, as Gary alluded to, he ended up playing guard the first year, Jonathan Ogden, because
Right.
TJ was the offensive tackle. Did he respect Tony's position, or it just seemed like he did?
Of course he did. Jo came in, as one of the more humble players that you ever want to see, being drafted that high. He didn't come in with the intent of shaking up anything. As a matter of fact, if we really go back to how he came in, drafting an offensive lineman was not initially on the table. When I believe the draft started for the Ravens, we were looking at drafting a running back.
Yeah, Lawrence Phillips.
Right.
Yeah.
Our line was in pretty good shape. I mean, and when they made the pick, we were all at a draft party. I think a kickoff for the draft, and Tony Jones was the one that reacted, somewhat negatively.
Right.
Of the situation. So Jo came in with the attitude, I'm trying to learn. I think we all saw, because we've been together by that time about 4 years together, coming from Cleveland. We all saw the move that the team was making and who was going to be affected by it. But I thought in '96, we only won maybe 4 games, but collectively as a group, that was one of the stronger group of players we had. And I think in Ravens, history, that offensive line that we had and the way we played together, it was a fun bunch of guys and some great personalities mixed in there.
We got a lot of different territory to cover with you, and we don't have endless amount of time, but I do have to ask you, you mentioned Kirk Ferentz a couple minutes ago. Mm-hmm. I knew Kirk when he was the offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens. I thought he was one of the finest people I'd ever met. Always have rooted for him. Does it surprise you, some of the allegations about the culture out there at Iowa, how it's been sort of racially insensitive, to say the least?
It does. It does. I've never known Kirk to be biased.
Yeah.
He's a stand-up guy, as far as I know. He coached us, the way he wanted to coach us, and was always upfront with us about our situation. I mean, we came out of that same kind of Belichick kind of, thought process where everything is here on the table. You perform or you don't, and you move on. So Kirk and those guys, Pat Hill, those guys have been, guys I've been able to revere and pretty much speak on very fondly, about our time. So the things coming out of Iowa, very shocking. I don't anything about what goes on up there. I assume maybe being in Iowa itself is shocking for a black guy to be up there.
Yeah.
So just take that alone. I'm sure there's some things that can possibly make guys uncomfortable. It's just a dynamic of the way we live, and if that's something that has to be done there, the culture has to change. Then I think they should move immediately try to doing that. But I think Kirk is a stand-up guy, and he will do diligence to fix those wrongs.
Very well said. Yeah.
Wally, again, point blank, we worked together for so long. I feel comfortable asking you these questions, and I'm sure you'll give us an honest answer. If you were in the NFL today, would you kneel for the national anthem?
Oh yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I come from a family where we are firmly cemented in our culture. Florida A&M is a historically black university, and there are a lot of things that I've studied over the years where a lot of things haven't changed. I mean, some things change, the face of some things change, but when you look behind the door, there's a lot of operational things that are still in place that are against, minorities, whether it be black, white, black, Spanish, whoever, different cultures. And, it is the foundation of which this country was started. And we have to realize that the trickle-down effect of those things are still happening today. And I would, Neil, I would be very much into social change and those things, because I understand how it works. I understand how it looks. I grew up in the South. Okay. I understand how things
Tallahassee.
really go. Okay. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, Leon County. Okay. I know how
Leon
things
County, right?
really go. And it's unfortunate, but being quiet about it is not the way to go. So yeah, I would definitely use my platform to be socially open about change and how we could all come together and educate people on what it is to be in this culture, and have the hard conversations, because I've been in those situations as well. I've been pulled over by policemen and identified as whatever, and luckily I'm still here to talk about those things.
Yeah.
But it does go on, and it's just something that we have to all address.
By the same token, if I can ask, the NFL has seemed to have done a 180 in terms of their stance now on social justice from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2016.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? A, B, happy, or C, they're just trying to cover their you-know-whats?
Oh, well, this is all a cover thing. Okay. So, I'm just, the true face of what we saw happened when Colin Kaepernick, explained, I thought, his thought process and what he saw, educational foundation, and, talked to the proper people to express how he felt about the country, how he felt about his position as an athlete, and how he wants to protest in relation to those feelings. And now we come back 2 years later and say, oh, Cap was right.
Right.
Well, I mean, this goes back to way beyond me. These situations have happened, many, many years. You can go back to civil rights and just type in civil rights and look at any video. These things happen. And the fact that they did their due diligence to make that 180, okay, and to now be friends of Kaepernick, because, hey, we know that he was not picked up by any team because of the backlash that he would possibly get by taking that stance and people kneeling for the national anthem. And look, there's still a lot of people out there that still don't understand, okay, what he was kneeling for. They don't understand what the Black Lives Matter is right now. There's still people who don't understand what the problem is. And, I would just ask those individuals to sit down and talk. Sit down and talk to any minority in this country and understand how he or she really grew up. It is a difference. It is a difference. It's not that big of a difference, but there's a lot of difference because the lack of understanding is not there. I can go back to my parents. Look, it's a big difference, okay, on how I grew up and how they grew up.
Yeah.
And we sit down and have those conversations internally about me growing up in the 70s and 80s and those guys growing up in the 50s and 60s. It's different, okay? It is different. So we just have to discuss those things, have an open dialogue, and develop understanding.
Was the Ravens culture with Ozzie Newsome as the general manager of the team, having a minority who was the major executive with the team, did that change the culture at all, Wally, at all? Because to me, nothing really can change unless minorities are in the boardroom, so to speak, where decisions are being made.
That's a great question, Stan. And here's why. That's a great question, because so many times we come into this game, or we come into a situation of professionalism where the higher you get to the top, the less color you have. And, that was one thing I will applaud for Art Modell.
Yeah.
Him doing is having some diversity within the organization. I mean, we knew Belichick definitely was the king of the show, when you had Mike Lombardi, who was the general manager. But you had Ozzie in that mix too. You had Ozzie around, he was learning. You saw that individual. You saw an individual that looked like you in a position of power. And that will give you the opportunity, it will give you a presentation to saying that, okay, well, I know Oz is a Hall of Famer. I'll never be a Hall of Famer. I don't know. But he has an opportunity to be here and to work in personnel and to work directly with the coaching staff. Yes, it made a tremendous amount of difference in your perception of the game and your perception of how you can move forward in the game. I mean, and Bill was great about that as well. He had Jim Brown was around all the time.
Yep.
He had players come in, Paul Warfield. These men were not there, but they came around and they were visibly around the team all the time. And when we moved to Baltimore, of course, we had James Shaq Harris, who, I knew him way back from the stories and everything that my coach in college told me. And you had John Wooten.
Yeah.
I mean, more profound than that, and having that man around your building, walking around, the respect that you have to garner for him, because he was one of the guys that was on that coalition with Kareem and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali and all those guys. It's a legendary picture of those men that were all together with their stand on civil rights and their stand as athletes. So yes, those things were huge contributions to the psyche, I believe, of every player around there. And those are some legendary figures that you had to respect.
Speaking of legendary figures, coming back to just talking football, there aren't that many people I get to talk to, or Gary, that played for Bill Belichick. And you played for him when you were a young player and he was a very young coach.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have ever thought that Bill Belichick was as good a coach as time has shown him to be?
Yes. Look, I've talked to a number of players, the Pepper Johnsons of the world, Anthony Pleasant, these guys that was also with Belichick for a very long time.
Yeah. And
the one thing that's always consistent with what they tell me is that, well, he hasn't changed that much. Okay. So his attention to detail about the game.
It was already there in 1993, 94, 95.
It was way out there.
Yeah.
It was way out there. There were things that we would talk about, and of course, it's a new game to me. I'm making that transition from college to pro, but from a game plan standpoint, there was no stone, that was uncovered. It's not as if you did not know the game plan. It's not as if you did not know what your responsibility is. It becomes, really one-on-one competition. If you lose, your battle is going to affect the game. It's going to affect the production of the play. So we were well informed. Maybe there was some Spygate stuff going on there. Maybe there were some opportunities to kind of definitely get close to that line and see how far you can go.
Yeah.
And look, that was part of the deal. We felt that as players, if you weren't close to that line, then you weren't really trying to win, because we were trying to look for any kind of advantage we can use to definitely to get a win. And we knew everything from the name of the referees to the number of percentages that they called and penalties. And if you got a penalty and Belichick told you, like, hey, these guys call 75% holding calls, so they're looking for that. So let's work on our technique during the week. Right. We had that as well. So if you got a holding penalty, that could be a $5,000 fine, a conduct detrimental fine. Okay, but we had everything. We had everything that we needed to try to win games, and I knew at some point it was going to catch on. I thought it was catching on because we had our guys in Cleveland in '95.
Yeah,
well, pretty solid team, and we end up, kind of taking that season, I think, and moving on to Baltimore. But it was coming together. And guys were buying into his concepts right there in Cleveland before we moved to Baltimore.
Mm.
As a follow-up to that, and Gary, I know I'm being rude because we have our system, but right. As a follow-up to that question, the fact that did Art do the right thing in moving to Marcha-Broda, who was fan-friendly in Baltimore, or should he have stuck with Belichick when he moved? and I asked you somebody that played for him because it's not that easy. Art was juggling a couple things because Belichick's attitude and the way he treated media probably wouldn't have gone over real well initially in Baltimore.
And I thought about that long and hard. Okay, I was one of those guys that was upset that Bill did not come with us from Cleveland, and it bothered me. It bothered me for a couple of years. But looking back at that situation and looking where Art was, what the angle was in trying to bring a new team to a new city, and then the city itself gravitating to a familiar name that love immediately and be a part of. I understand the business move that he had to make.
Yeah.
You had to go with Ted Marshall-Grover. Look, he was the last coach that the Colts had here, I believe. He came from some successful programs with the Bills and it was actually with the Colts.
Yeah.
Indy. And I understood the business move because you have to sell your team. That's the main objective. You have to bring it to the community and you have to make it acceptable for people to want to be a part of. And Bill was just not that guy at that particular time. Look, he's a football guy. And that's it. But he's not going to be a seller of an organization. So I definitely understand why Art made that move.
Wally, speaking of business moves, you had to make a business decision also. We kind of alluded to it earlier when undrafted free agent Wally Williams became free agent Wally Williams and was able to cash in with the New Orleans Saints. But it's interesting that we talk about coaches because Brian Billick even told you that it was time to get paid. And you obviously listened to that. And I've talked to Brian about that before. But my question, though, is after you left, got the money, went to New Orleans, I'm sure had a great time down there playing with some good guys, etc. But you missed out on the ascension of the Ravens becoming one of the most respected and best teams in the National Football League. You missed the Super Bowl by a season or so.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, any regrets when you look back at the cost and the benefits of doing what you did?
Nobody's really ever asked me that, Gary. That's a deep question right there. Any regrets?
I'm a deep guy, Wally.
Yeah, I see. Look, as the old saying goes, looking back at things is always 2020. It's always 2020 vision. I think I'm going to say no. I'm going to say there are no regrets with that. It was an opportunity for me to actually celebrate, my career. One thing I've always wanted and I never got was to be on that draft board thing to say you were drafted by an NFL team. So I look at the historical relevance of the 1993 NFL and your draft name is coming down. And yeah, that happened. Well, my name is not there. And to me, that was my first round pick, draft day, getting my jersey, walking across the screen, and having that opportunity to actually feel what that was. The one thing that soured my taste most of all, I think about contract negotiations and visual perceptions. Baltimore still looked at me as an undrafted free agent. And as long as I was still looked on like that, that was a problem. That was a major problem with me. And I wanted the opportunity to feel like, I'm here to be a part of something bigger. And I'm the missing piece that could probably catapult us to win some games. And in 2000, you're right. We played the Ravens, came up here and played the Ravens in 99. And that defense was tremendous.
Yeah.
And I got a report to our Saints team and said, look, if you don't block 52, we don't have a chance. Okay? All right. Played against this guy for a long time, had some battles with him and even coached him up a little bit. So he knows some things to look out for. So if you don't block 5-2, we are in trouble. And I knew the defense was developing quite well. I got to see them in 2000 as well, scouting reports and all those things. And, when you play against some guys like that and you see how rugged those guys played, it makes you feel, I was actually very proud. I was very proud because to a certain extent, I felt a part of that team. I felt a part of those young guys developing, you know, Jonathan and Ray, and then the Rob Burnett's and the Matt Stovers and the Sharpers, all these guys. Well, they were there in 98. Okay, they were there in 97, and you saw these young men grow. So, look, I made the decision for me and my family at that particular time, and was able to do some great things for those guys, and still doing great things for those guys as a result of making that decision. But I felt I didn't get a ring, did not get a ring, didn't play in that game, but I was tremendously proud of what they were able to accomplish. I felt like I was a part of that, still do to a certain extent. And to watch those guys grow and to come together in that season, it was incredible to watch on the outside. I'm sure you guys had fun watching on the inside, but it was incredible to watch on the outside when I was playing for another team, because I've always monitored what the Ravens did.
Gary, you got one more, and then I'll wrap it up. Because this went where we weren't totally expecting it to go.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk a lot of pandemic stuff, but Gary, why don't you ask a question, and then I'll finish it up.
You know, just, I mean, God, we can talk about, you know, yesteryear forever.
All day.
Catch people up to speed on what you got going on right now. You're involved in a very interesting production, video production, that I think Baltimore fans will be fascinated about.
Yes. We talked about this a couple of years ago. So now it's starting to take place here, show its face. And we're going to be coming out with this Ghost to 33rd Street here pretty soon. And look, it's been very interesting for me to study this for the last couple of years. You know, I'm an outsider, so I can make, you know, I'm making decisions based on what I've read, based on what I've researched. And, you know, I was talking to Stan about this the other day. You know, Cal Rosenblum, for all of his glitz and glamour, I thought he sold Irsay a raw deal. Okay, I thought the city of Baltimore gave Cal Rosenblum a raw deal. And if you weigh those options, you look at what the football game is today, look at what the NFL is today, and you ask yourself, would any NFL team stay in a city that does not want to renovate their stadium? I think we got the answer to that with the Oakland Raiders. That's why they're the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm looking at this straight from a business standpoint. You know, I don't know personalities. I hear Irsay was a terrible guy, but it was also, I think, a terrible deal that the city proposed and that Rosenblum proposed in getting to LA and selling the Colts to Irsay.
As I understand it, though, Irsay would never have been let in the fraternity to just simply own the Rams. And that was the deal that Rosenblum worked behind. Rosenblum was very friendly with Pete Rozelle at the time, and the deal was worked out that Rosenblum was going to end up in LA, and that's how Irsay got into the league, you know.
And I think the thing that really is most curious to me is that a lot of these things happen with the conflict with the stadium, okay, Colts, way before Irsay got there. Okay, this thing goes back to 1959. And when the Colts were winning Super Bowls and being playoff caliber teams, Cal Rosenblum was threatening to not play any more home games in Baltimore because the stadium was deemed inadequate. And then there's this thing, which is the most interesting part of this whole controversy to me. Article 9, which a lot of people, maybe a lot of Baltimoreans don't remember or don't conceptually understand what that meant. But there was an article, there was an amendment put in Baltimore City by Hyman Pressman years ago.
He was the city controller,
Exactly, city controller at that particular time. And the city voted 56-44 not to renovate Memorial Stadium and turn it into a veterans monument. And that deemed it not really putting city funds toward renovating the stadium. Now, that is not the business of operations where you see right now. And the Jerry Joneses of the world, okay? We just talked about the Raiders, the thing they're doing out in LA right now with the Chargers and the Rams. You know, that business model is not conclusive to any kind of business model that you see in today's game, which is very interesting as to what the structure of that team was, the structure of what the city was, and not trying to build another stadium. And then how those things changed to where the Ravens actually come in here and a lot of the rules and regulations. I mean, man, you talked about this, Stan, the blue law. I mean, goodness gracious. No NFL team is going to come into a city with television rights and all these things if you can't play games at 1. And I think at that
Yeah,
time,
the blue law meant that they had to play games starting at 2:00 on Sunday.
And those things were just, pitfalls, I believe, and poked a lot of holes into what the Colts were doing and really where the game was starting to go. Whereas I think it not only fell out of favor with, Ursay and everybody else, but I thought the NFL, they want to pull that trigger too and get a team out of Baltimore based on those things.
Hey, I promise you, when this thing's ready to drop that goes to 33rd Street, we'll do whatever we're doing media-wise. We'll support you and get it on. I just want to wrap up by asking you, you have a thing where you teach young players how to play offensive line. Do you do that in person or is that via film study?
I do that in person.
Okay.
Right now we have our groups are very small. We're going to take 4 guys per session.
Right.
And I do those things in person. It's important for kids to understand how things look and how things feel. We try to promote safety in every element of what we do. We like to line up your arms and legs and your core and everything with this word that we use, this concept that we use called joint centration, which takes a lot of stress off of your body. So we go through a systematic operation. It's a lot of detailed body talk. We talk about certain muscles that offensive linemen use more so than others that a wide receiver or a linebacker or that we use. And we look at this as a separate order of operation and a detailed method of play, just like a quarterback. You want to have the proper throwing motion. You want to have your body in the right position. You want to make sure that you have the proper lean and your aiming points and your shoulders are directly where the ball is going. Well, we coach offensive line in that same context where we believe that everything starts from the ground up with your feet, having the proper placement, the proper angles. And we go through a lot of detail that actually translates into operational skill sets that are on the field. So we take the off the field things in the weight room and translate that to on the field strength to where players can have better fundamental techniques. It's not the gospel, but I think it is a functionable situation where you have a cheat sheet to always go back to your technique if you have trouble. And we definitely coach that. I don't want guys to understand that what I'm talking about here is the all of the world things on how to play offensive line, but it is a fundamental cheat sheet to always have your body in the proper position and also be able to work and train and work the proper muscles so you can have the most effective force and have the most effective body position that you can have out there on the field. It's very dangerous out there, man. So we can help you out, and have you for 20% of the time. That's a big goal for us.
Is the goal of what you do with these young players, Wally, is it to try to get them better, to help them get scholarships to play at the college level, or are you working with college players during their off season?
That's a great question, Stan. And here's why. I talk to parents all the time, and the one thing I tell parents, like, don't look at me and bring your son here and expect for him to be like me. I am not birthing pros here. Okay, I am birthing competitive guys who want to learn. If you take this and become a pro,
good way to put it. Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
You become a pro or you get a scholarship, great. You always have a place to come and work. Okay, but this is not a gold card to get into the NFL or a gold card to get to college. A lot of things have to happen for that to go well for anybody's son. Timing, right place at the right time, all these things, size, all these things are gonna play a role. So what we guarantee is that your son or daughter will be fundamentally sound. They will know how to keep their body in a position of power, but also be safe and be ready to be competitive. And we'll give them every opportunity to learn, what to look for on those game film, those films that you're studying. We'll teach you coverage, understand how coverage definitely affects the blitz pickup and what you have to do to identify what's happening so you can talk to your quarterbacks and all those things, and how to communicate, which a lot of young guys don't know about. They don't understand how to communicate, how to work little fundamental techniques, stunts, tricky things that defenses do. And we try to, work every angle to keep our young guys motivated. So it's high school kids, college kids, couple guys I work with in prep, for the draft. So we keep it fundamentally right there to where we can help out everybody who aspires to be a great offensive player, offensive line athlete. And if you get better from our system, great. That's what you're supposed to get better. If you go to the pros, that's better. That's good for everybody. You make it to the pros.
How can somebody get in touch with you if they want to try and work with you?
Oh, you can look me up on my Facebook page. There's Williams Training Systems on my Facebook page. You can also inbox me because my logo is there as well. And look, we're here to help out anybody that we possibly can. It's been very hard, of course, traveling because of where we are right now. But we know it won't always be like this. So I will definitely be in the area, doing these same things. And look, meeting people and being back in that community with other offensive linemen who aspire to be well is also somewhat therapeutic for me.
Yeah, I bet it is.
I live to these young kids that do well, and we have a lot of guys in the NFL right now that come out to Arizona to our main facility out there and play. And there's some very good guys, very stand-up guys, and it's all family oriented out there. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Wally Williams, it's great to be back in touch with you. Stay in touch with us. Gary, you did a great job as always.
Thank you, guys.
He always does do a great job. Seriously, appreciate
it. Wally.
Wally Williams, longtime Raven, long time ago Raven, but a good friend as well. Wally, appreciate it. For Press Box, I'm Stan the Fan. For Gary Stein, we'll see you down the road very shortly. Next week, John Moog, who helped bring the NFL to Baltimore, is going to join us on Wednesday evening. Thanks, Wally. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys.